Yeah, my name's Joop. I'm a former IBA student at Erasmus. I started Uni-Life roughly 3 years ago. While I was a student, I saw that there were so many things happening on campus that I just didn't know about. So there was hundreds of events from hundreds of associations, and they all had their own Facebook or email or website. And as a result, I was missing out on a lot, which I thought was a shame. So then I came up with a plan to kind of tackle that issue, and that's how Uni-Life was born. It was very unusual in the beginning, I think for everyone, but also for us. We were really wondering, how are we going to deal with this? Because obviously, in the end, we're a university event platform, and Corona meant all universities are closed and all events are cancelled. So that was a little bit of a switch for us. Personally, it all went quite well. So I was very grateful to be healthy, to not have anyone in my direct environment who was ill, which I think helps a lot in terms of your professional dealing with it as well. And professionally, I'd like to say it was leadership, but it was maybe also a bit of luck that we actually managed to grow faster than we did before the Corona crisis. Partially because we just adapted very quick. I think because we were a young startup, still a young initiative, we could, but I also can say that it had a little bit of luck involved, in the sense that some things just fell right in place and kind of helped us move forward. I think our goal with Uni-Life is not only do we want to create an overview of all events happening for students on campus, but our bigger goal is to really create campus-wide communities with lots of students, lots of employees, professors, to really make sure that anyone who joins that community is really taken care of in terms of events, in terms of their friends, in terms of what's happening around them. And when the crisis started, it was obviously very hard to build a campus community because everyone was sitting at home, students were bored, online events were a little scary for some. So it was quite a big challenge. How are we going to deal with this? And one of the first things we did, and this is probably day 2 or 3 of the lockdown, is we created a separate website from our app, which had lots of student blogs, which had podcasts, videos, so that students could really kind of see that even online, you could still create a community, you could still meet new friends, you could still learn new skills. And we also started working with Stay Rotterdam, which I'm sure a lot of students have heard of, but is basically the platform to get to know each other, to go to events together. And together with them, we set up Stay Delft at the TU Delft, which is one of our new partner universities. So we basically created the same community over there. And then we brought both communities together by organizing fun pub quizzes or entrepreneurial events to really make sure that students could still get the most out of this unusual time. For us, it was actually quite simple. So me and my co-founder, we were the only full-time employees first, and we had 2 students who were still Erasmus students finishing off their masters, and they were only working part-time. So they still had other things to worry about, and we didn't have to worry about bringing them into the office or motivating them, because this was still a side project for them. So that was quite okay. And they were actually more motivated probably than ever before, because I think Corona is a great equalizer. So whatever anyone was working on beforehand, most of it was brought back to zero and everyone had to start again. And when you have to start again, it's great being small because you don't have to discuss with 1,000 people. You don't need lots of signatures and people approving things. You just plan it, and at the end of the day, it's done, which was really cool. And in the process, we actually kind of recruited new students on board to help us with that challenge. So we actually turned it from a very unusual scenario into a very motivating circumstance, which a lot of students joined us in. And when campus is open, that really is full time, because you're in the library or you're going to events or you're hanging out with friends. But when you're just in your room all day, I don't think it is necessarily full time anymore, because I think if you ask most students, they'll only study a couple of hours a day, if that. And so a lot of time opens up. So a lot of students, I think, were also very interested in doing something on the side and staying involved. And I think times like this also really help you realize who someone is. You know, are they just going to sit back and wait for it all to be over? Or are they going to say, I'm going to make the most out of this? And then it's really easy to distinguish who's who in those types of scenarios, I think. I think the hardest part when you're leading a small team is to always think ahead. So when you have a team, most of that team will be working on the more short term, on the things that just need to get done. You know, they'll be doing their tasks and thinking ahead a little. But I think when you lead a team, your main task is to think ahead of what's going to happen. How are things going to change? How do we need to adapt to that? And with Corona, that was a huge struggle. Because, for instance, you know, when it first started, it was quite clear, okay, the next 6 to 8 weeks, everything will be on lockdown. But for instance, when the universities are now slowly going into summer mode, but you know, the regulations are being opened a little. On the one hand, people are going to become more active, but on the other hand, universities are going to go into summer mode, creating this really weird contrast. So I think the hardest thing you have to do then is still be able to plan ahead. Like, is it going to be busy? Is it going to be calm? And adapt the team to that, adapt the tasks to that, the resources. And that's been the hardest task for me. I'm not sure if it's really a decision, but always staying on top of that. But, you know, having said that, when you're always thinking ahead, you also have to make some decisions for now. So for instance, we were going to recruit 1 or 2 more students in a certain area where we were already quite far with, but last minute we had to say, okay, we're not doing it because we don't think it's going to be relevant anymore. And those are not the most fun talks to have. I think I'm still kind of learning what that real takeaway will be, because from my perspective, I think the crisis isn't over yet. And I think even though things might be looking a little better now, I feel like the effects will still be there for a while. So yeah, I think I'm still learning. But one of the biggest takeaways I probably took from it is that, you know, in times like these, even the biggest corporations who are so established are struggling, which shows how interdependent and connected we all are, which is great. But I think it's also really important towards the future to make sure that you still have that sense of autonomy, and to make sure that, you know, even if things all around you start falling apart, that you have something to fall back on. I'm not sure how relevant that's going to be for Uni-Life right now, you know, because we don't have that much to fall back on. But I do think it's a valuable takeaway to have later on in life, to know that, you know, a crisis like this can all of a sudden rip apart all the certainties you had, and to always have that little bit of certainty, you know, to make sure you still have that, so that even when the world's falling apart, you don't have to fall apart straight away as well.